I want you to change the world, and don't think that this is going to happen peacefully or you can do it alone. We need to kill the rich. You get out there, you use your weapons, and you rip Washington apart. You hunt down the billionaires, the bank bosses, the CEOs, the scumbags, and the liars, the governors, the lobbyists, the senators, because they're all the same, and you hang them.
Good morning, everyone. It is February 28th, 2020. I'm Eric. I've been absent due to I broke a tooth Sunday night and quickly got an abscess from it, and I had to have an emergency oral surgery, so I've been dealing with that, and I'm not on webcam because my face is still swollen, along with my mouth, and I generally do not feel all that hot. But it's not due to any kind of sickness. It's because my mouth fucking hurt for a couple of days, and it kept me awake. So if I pronounce something funny, well, it won't be a whole lot different than usual, but that's the reason. So I've been off since what, Sunday, Saturday, something like that, and a lot has happened since then. And I have, as you can see, a few articles pulled up, and I'm going to hit the virus news first and then get into some of these headlines. Scientists discover HIV-like mutation which makes coronavirus extremely infectious. And you might recall a couple of weeks ago, a Indian doctor or doctors published a similar report, and well, they had to retract that report. While mainstream media, or mainstream scientists rather, continue to perform mental gymnastics to insist that the new coronavirus wasn't man-made, new research from scientists in China and Europe reveal that the disease happens to have an HIV-like mutation which allows it to bind with human cells up to 1,000 times stronger than the SARS virus, according to SCMP. Recall that at the end of January, a team of Indian scientists wrote in a now retracted, scandalous paper claiming that the coronavirus may have been genetically engineered to incorporate parts of the HIV genome, writing, in quotes, this uncanny similarity of novel inserts in the 2019 nCoV spike protein to HIV-1, GP120, and GAG is unlikely to be fortuitous in nature, and that means it's not likely that it occurred naturally. Fast forward to new research by a team of Nankia University, which writes that COVID-19 has an HIV-like mutation that allows it to quickly enter the human body by binding with a receptor called ACE2 or ACE2 on a cell membrane. So Dr. Cottrell rather, he pretty much nailed it on the head at the very beginning of all this. Other highly contagious viruses, including HIV and Ebola, target an enzyme called furin, which works as a protein activator in the human body. Many proteins are inactive or dormant when they are produced and have to be cut at specific points to activate their various functions. When looking at the genome sequence of the new coronavirus, Professor, I'm not even going to try to butcher that name, a professor and his team at Nankia University found a section of mutated genes that did not exist in SARS but were similar to those found in HIV and Ebola. In quotes again, this finding suggests that the 2019 NCOV may be significantly different from the SARS coronavirus in the infection pathway, reads the paper published this month at ChinaXIV.org, a platform used by the Chinese Academy of Sciences, which releases research papers prior to peer review. In quotes once again, this virus may use the packing mechanisms of other viruses such as HIV, they added. For those confused, what the latest scientific paper claims is that whereas the coronavirus may indeed contain a specific HIV-like feature that makes it extremely infectious, that the result of a rather bizarre mutation. However, since the scientists did not make the scandalous claim that Chinese scientists had created an airborne version of HIV, but instead blamed a mutation, they will likely not be forced to retract it, even if the odds of such a random mutation taking place naturally are extremely small. The probability of this being a natural mutation is minute. As a reminder, the running narrative is that the coronavirus lies dormant in bats somewhere between 20 and 70 years, then crossed over to humans through an unknown species, possibly a pangolin, before it emerged at a Wuhan, China meat market roughly 900 feet from a level 4 bioweapons lab. They're still going with this stupidly ridiculous cover that it came from a meat market in Wuhan. Can you believe that shit? And what were they researching at said lab? Among other things, why Ebola and HIV can lie dormant in bats without causing diseases. According to the new study, the mutation can generate a structure known as a cleavage site, not the good cleavage that we all like looking at, in the new coronavirus spike protein. Compared to the SARS way of entry, this binding method is 100 to 1,000 times as efficient, according to the study. The virus uses the outreaching spike protein to hook onto the host cell, but normally this protein is inactive. The cleavage site structure's job is to cheat the human furin protein, so it will cut and activate the spike protein and cause a direct fusion of the viral and cellular membranes. According to the report, a follow-up study from Hong University of Science and Technology in Wuhan confirmed Nankia University's findings. The mutation could not be found in SARS, MERS, or bat CoV RATG13, a bat coronavirus that was considered the original source of the new coronavirus with a 96% similarity in genes, it said. This could be the reason why SARS-CoV-2 is more infectious than other coronaviruses, Lee wrote in a paper released on Sunday. Meanwhile, a study by French scientists, which was published in the scientific journal Antiviral Research on February 10th, also found a fern-like cleavage site that is absent in similar coronaviruses. Scientists, or Chinese scientists, speculate that drugs targeting the furin enzyme could potentially hinder the virus replication inside the human body. Drugs up for consideration include a series of HIV-1 therapeutic drugs, such as Indinvar, and I'm not going to try to butcher these names, but isn't that funny? Don't you find it strange that HIV drugs are being used when they continue to claim that it's a naturally reoccurring disease or occurring disease, which it's not. The conclusion is in line with several reports from doctors who self-administered HIV drugs after testing positive for coronavirus. However, there have been no clinical tests to confirm the theory, and it's all perfectly natural. Moving on to the next one. CDC waited days to test California's latest mystery patient for the virus. This comes out of the New York Times. By the time President Trump kicked off his coronavirus press conference last night, top officials in California's Department of Health were preparing an announcement of their own in conjunction with the CDC. They were preparing to confirm a Washington Post report about a new coronavirus patient whose infection was of unknown provenance, meaning they did not have any contact with individuals from Wuhan or China or Italy or any of the rest of them. But according to a story published Thursday morning by the New York Times, Californian health officials could have known about the infection and thus taken the critically early steps to quarantine the individual days earlier if it weren't for restrictive federal criteria determining when federal or state officials can use one of the limited numbers of coronavirus testing kits available in the U.S. So we definitely have many, many, many more infectious people that the authorities, so-called authorities, don't even know about. Isn't that great? When the patient, who reportedly lives somewhere in Solano County, was first admitted to Davis Medical Center a week ago, doctors suspected she might have the virus, but they weren't able to secure a test. Doctors at the University of California Davis Medical Center considered the novel pathogen a possible diagnosis when the patient was first admitted last week. But the federal agency that conducts the testing did not administer the test until days later because the case did not fit the agency's narrow testing criteria, university officials said in a letter to the campus community late Wednesday. Because the case didn't fit the CDC's criteria. Wonder why they're putting such strict criteria on whether an individual should be tested or not. It could be that they don't have enough kits. It could be the intentional allowance of spreading. The CDC has restricted testing to patients who either traveled to China recently or who know they had contact with someone infected with the virus. Even though the patient was already on a ventilator and suffering from severe pneumonia when she arrived at UC Davis from another hospital in Northern California. So this woman was able to spread this virus far and wide. Isn't that great? Interestingly, the New York Times never explains why the patient, who also happens to be the 60th confirmed case in the U.S., was finally given a test. Isn't that great? In quotes, upon admission, our team asked public health officials if this case could be COVID-19, the letter said. The medical center requested testing from the CDC. Since the patient did not fit the existing CDC criteria for COVID-19, a test was not immediately administered. UC Davis Health does not control the testing process. And no, they do not. The CDC does. Until now, public health officials have been able to trace all of the infections in the country to a recent trip abroad or a known patient, and to identify the sources of exposure. The thing that would immediately make all of us uneasy is if this person has no direct contact with someone who comes from an affected country, said Dr. William Schaffner, an infectious disease specialist at Vanderbilt University. That would suggest that there are other undetected cases out there, and we have already started some low-grade transmission. So, in my opinion, and it's just an opinion, what do I fucking know, right? They are intentionally allowing this to spread so that they can do their own version of what China's done over there. And just when you thought maybe, just maybe, like Donald Trump, that warm weather was going to bring relief, just when you thought this, we find that there are areas where this outbreak is happening that is, pretty warm already. Mexico confirms second case in Latin America. Nigeria confirms first case south of the Sahara. Live updates. Alright. After several scares, Mexico has finally confirmed its first case of coronavirus, according to Mexico's deputy health minister. According to Reuters, the patient recently traveled to Italy and came up positive on the initial test. His case is only the second confirmed in Latin America outside Brazil. The patient is said to be not in a serious condition. In corporate news, following Facebook, Goldman Sachs, and a host of other companies, Kraft Heinz has taken the precautionary step of postponing its March conference in Chicago. The conference was supposed to host 250 of the troubled packaged food company's best managers. And on Wednesday, the coronavirus outbreak reached a new milestone when the number of cases confirmed in the world ex-China finally surpassed the number being confirmed on the mainland. 2 days later, and we're almost at the point where the number of Thursday's new cases confirmed by Iran was roughly half of the total coming out of Wuhan. Now, did any of you see the press conference given by Iran? My wife and I watched it, and he was up there coughing, wiping his forehead with a rag, and we jokingly said, oh, he must have it. And it turns out he did, along with another high-level government official. So, as of Friday morning, the number of confirmed cases worldwide, those are just confirmed, has passed 83,000, while the number of deaths have topped 2,800. Let me stop right there. There has been 245 cases confirmed in Iran and 26 deaths. So that's a little over a 10% death rate there. I'm not saying that that's the ongoing death rate, but that's a pretty high amount of deaths for the number of cases being reported by them. Since yesterday we first noted this chart, the number of cases outside China has soared, particularly in South Korea and across Europe, as the number of new cases in mainland China, but outside Wuhan, dropped into the single digits. And of course, we cannot believe anything said by the communist Chinese. A WHO spokesman said Friday that the virus outbreak is getting bigger and that the possibility of it reaching some, if not all, countries is something that we have warned about for a while. Even every Brooklyn hipster who's been living in blissful ignorance of the pandemic unfolding around them, dismissing every new warning as racist right-wing alarmism, is about to start paying attention. The dog of a coronavirus patient in Hong Kong has been found to carry a low level of the deadly virus, according to a statement from the region's government. Now, we have summer coming up, and with summer comes a pest that none of us like, and that would be mosquitoes. If this continues, which it looks like it is, all of us are in peril as a result of these mosquitoes. Just putting that out there. According to the New York Post, or as Gerald Celente likes to call them, New York Compost, researchers tested the dog's nasal cavities and swabbed its mouth on Wednesday, and soon discovered that a test returned a weak positive for the samples. In quotes, at present, the Agriculture, Fisheries, and Conservation Department does not have evidence that pet animals can be infected with COVID-19 virus or can be a source of infection to people, Hong Kong's government said in a press release. And don't worry, dog lovers, the animal is being quarantined in an animal shelter holding no other animals. The pooch will remain under quarantine until it tests negative. So, once again, if you've not prepared, and look, while I was down with my abscess here, we did, or I should say I did, I went out and bought a bunch of shit. I went out and bought a bunch of Lysol, bleach wipes, toilet paper. Got enough toilet paper to last about 4 months. We got more food, more ammo, and we're working on more ways to purify our water. I don't think this is going away, and I think probably once our healthcare workers start dropping dead, probably a lot of people are going to stop going to work. So, let's move on. There's other stuff going on here. We'll hit SHTF plant because they are the ones on here are related to coronavirus, but we're going to go ahead and still just hit the headlines. Ominous warnings about the very rapid spread of the coronavirus. This one is from Michael Schneider. Is a widespread coronavirus outbreak inside the U.S. inevitable? Inevitable? I'm going to argue that it already is widespread. After weeks of generally optimistic statements, officials are now warning us to prepare for the worst. Over the past several days, we have seen the number of confirmed cases outside China escalate dramatically, and this has really rattled global financial markets. And yes, we are going to see an economic collapse along with this. Leaked audio. Bloomberg says he'll drone his critics and protect the banks. Democrat Michael Bloomberg has been caught saying he will drone those who disagree with him and protect the big banks. The hypocritical guy who backs and funds his own anti-gun campaign now wants the power to drone his critics. And while most of us are paying attention to the spread of this virus, the local or state governments out there and the federal government are working hard behind the scenes to undermine your human rights. And one of these human rights is the right to self-defense. Joe Biden lies again, says 150 million people killed by guns since 2007. When Democrats open their mouths, lies come out. It just happens, and Joe Biden is no different. the presidential candidate and former vice president rather said that 150 million people have been killed by guns since 2007. And it could be true. It could be if they include the gun deaths of the authorities around the world. U.S. military prepares for coronavirus pandemic. Max Slavel is the author of this one. In the United States, it isn't health officials that are preparing for the possibility of the coronavirus outbreak becoming a pandemic. The military is preparing, and that should concern everyone. Think gun confiscation. While everyone is at home on lockdown. And a lot of people are blaming the coronavirus for the global economy. However, it should be noted that the global economy was sinking long before this virus appeared. Brandon Smith did this one. In order to determine if a geopolitical or economic threat is legitimate, I find it helps to watch how the mainstream propaganda narrative flows and changes. And remember, about a month, maybe a little more than that, mainstream media, along with a lot of other people, were downplaying this virus. Now we have Donald Trump downplaying this virus, while everybody else is beginning to recognize that this is very serious shit. Will a face mask really protect you from the coronavirus? The answer is no. These face masks are designed to catch bugs that are 4 microns in size. This particular virus is 2, half that. So no, a N95 mask will not protect you from getting this virus. And if you want to protect yourself, you're going to have to wear a gas mask. The risk to Trump's re-election, markets plunge. President Donald Trump is facing a black swan event or threat to the economy and therefore his re-election chances. Well, so far they haven't canceled any large events. For example, right here where I live, there's going to be a big Bernie Sanders rally. I wonder how many of these rallies are places or events that helped this virus spread. Nearly 2/3 of voters think Trump will win re-election later this year, if there's an election at all, right? The extreme panic the coronavirus is causing elsewhere on the globe could soon be coming to the United States. Michael Schneider. U.S. government officials are doing their best to keep the general public calm, but everyone can see what is happening in the rest of the world. There are now empty store shelves in Italy, just like there are in China. People are waiting in extremely long lines to buy masks in South Korea, just like we saw in Hong Kong. And you don't expect to see this happening here because our government will not be handing out any masks. Harvard scientists, the coronavirus will infect 70% of humanity. A scientist at Harvard University is predicting the coronavirus, which originated in Wuhan, China, will infect 70% of humanity. Now, they keep on saying it originated in Wuhan, China, but is there really any proof of that? Mark Lipsitch is predicting the coronavirus will ultimately not be containable and within a year will infect somewhere between 40 and 70% of humanity. WHO, it's too early to declare a pandemic, but it's not too early to prepare. I thought the meaning of pandemic is when multiple countries work with infected people. So as you can see, this is not going away anytime soon. And Donald Trump is a freaking moron for saying some of the things he said. It would have been better for him to keep his mouth shut and to let the CDC, NIH, and others do the talking for him. One more to go here. I'm going to hit the headlines here at the Free Thought Project simply because while this virus is spreading, we have not seen any kind of slowdown in the overall behavior of law enforcement. Gruesome video shows cops kill family's dog in front of kids and force the dad to cut off its head. Now, if this guy was a man, he would have told the cops, fuck you, if you want the dog's head cut off, you do it. Watch cop punches innocent man in the head 12 times and then jokes about it with fellow cops. Crazed cop fires off a shot before shoving gun into subdued man's head. Innocent family raided by cops, assaulted after dad stopped a wildcat from attacking their daughter. And I will be covering this in a separate video and this in a separate video. I'll try to get to them today. In 2020, more people are enslaved on Earth than ever before in human history. Shocking study shows police chases over minor crimes kills thousands of innocent bystanders. Thousands. Innocent father branded domestic terrorist for supporting the Constitution. Cop chokes innocent teen unconscious, smashes his head in with a flashlight. Man accurately predicts on Facebook Live he's about to be pulled over for driving while black. Man falls asleep in a bowling alley, so a cop shatters his leg with a baton. Man acquitted for defending himself against cops who unlawfully beat him. And more of us need to be defending ourselves against these fucking tyrants. We should be fighting back against the authorities. We should be standing our ground against them. Because remember, they consider you an enemy. Right? Remember that. Bad apple, 2 troopers in the same department arrested for sharing child porn. Assange lawyer claims U.S. government plotted kidnapping and poisoning of WikiLeaks publisher. Officer's body cam goes dark as innocent family beaten, but the dash cam caught it all. Not very smart, are they? As Americans distracted by Trump tweets, President quietly attacks medical protections. He's working in behalf of big pharma and big banks and big corporations. He's not working in the behalf of you and myself. Man disobeys cops after they falsely claims his ashtray is paraphernalia and wins. Innocent mom gave permission for cops to search her home. They destroyed it with grenades instead. Please let me go. Heartbreaking video shows 6-year-old girl cuffed, arrested for a temper tantrum. They have no business arresting children. None. And yet they're doing it. There is no greater threat to your health, to your well-being, to your security than that of our government. And until the people of this world recognize this, we will continue to escalate the violence coming from the state, the kidnapping coming from the state, the overall brutality coming from the state. This is why I tell you every video to kill the state and live free.